Thanks for listening to The Front Lounge with Congos. You can catch this live every Tuesday on our Twitch. That's twitch.tv/congosmusic. Also, make sure to join our Discord. That's congos.com/discord, Discord. A lot of fun people there. It's a great community. If you'd like to support the podcast, join our Patreon. That's patreon.com/Congos. You'll get access to all the archives of streams that we've done on Twitch, plus merch discounts and more.
All right, here, let me do a quick intro. Hello, everyone. I'm Johnny Congus. This is episode 51 of the Front Lounge podcast. You're watching it live here, probably on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, all those places. We have a really great guest today. His name's Brent Looby. He's the CEO, co-founder of Desert Door Distillery. And we're going to be talking about Sotol, which I'm not even going to try to explain. We'll let you explain. We'll get into that, and we'll talk about all things we've been talking off the air. You're a real Texan, unlike a lot of the people that are starting to come into this area. So this is Brent. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate y'all having me over.
Yeah, this is so I reached out to you because before I had moved to the Austin area, to Dripping Springs, where I'm at, we're driving around looking at houses and came across Desert Door Distillery. You're out in Driftwood, not too far from us here. And I had said that I had drunk some Sotol in Brooklyn at a bar with a mutual friend of ours, and had a very bad experience because it's pretty brutal. But stopped in at your place, tried some of the Sotol, really grew to love it, and then it was really surprised, and we can probably get into this, to find it nationally now, seeing it distributed kind of nationally. So I picked up a bottle in Phoenix where we're at, and now it seems like you can find it anywhere. You've expanded obviously a lot.
We are slowly working on that. We what started as just a little classroom project in the summer of 2016, and then we started here. We worked our way into 5 markets, and now we're in 15 markets. Wow, and we're also in Italy and France.
Wow. Whoa. Yeah. So why don't we start with
the most judgmental markets? That's nice, yeah.
Why don't we start with what is Sotol?
So Sotol is, from a spirit standpoint, it's like tequila's vibrant cousin. Kind of like that crazy uncle that comes over, a crazy cousin that comes over. It's just got a little bit on you really like them, but you kind of want, it's so they are related. It is not agave.
Right.
But when you go up to the subfamily of Asparagicaceae, if we want to get into the taxonomy of the plant.
Yeah, we can go deeper.
So,
this is interesting for us.
They are related. They're both desert native plants. And so the Sotol just has this really wicked cool history in this part of the world, what is now known as Southwest Texas. It's been around for 10,000 years. And it grows wild in the Chihuahuan Desert. We have 11 counties in Southwest Texas that are designated in the Chihuahuan Desert, but as we all know, plants have little regard for geopolitical boundaries. It actually starts growing naturally about 10 miles down the road from where we're sitting right now.
I didn't know that.
Go all the way down to the river, follow the I-10 corridor out to El Paso, and that's where Texas Sotol grows. It also grows natively in southern New Mexico, southeast Arizona, and the northern states of Mexico, Coahuila, Durango, Chihuahua.
Okay.
What you brought here, I'll just... He brought a plant. So you can see that, right?
So Sotol is a generic name for 22 species in the Daesalerion genus. Mm-hmm. And so what Dylan's holding up is actually one of our hearts from the Daesalerion texanum, which is what we use explicitly, and it's the one varietal that grows here in Texas. So it's kind of cool that it's actually got Texas in its Latin name.
Yeah.
Right. Is it related to artichoke and asparagus?
It's very closely related to an artichoke and asparagus. And so when you go back to the 10,000-year history, when nomadic peoples would follow proteins in the migratory season, they would cook using pit hearth ovens. It's something that was found along all across both Americas, where you would dig a shallow oblong hole, light a fire, throw rocks on it, heat up the rocks, and then you would take whatever Mother Nature provided you, and you would lay it on the hot rocks, cover it, and out here it would be cactus, and then you would bury it, and then come back 3 days later. This is what they would cook. So they would actually eat these things, you can see it looks very similar to, let's get a decent leaf off. So as you were talking about, it looks very similar to an artichoke, and they would actually use this as a tool for eating and drinking.
Okay.
So it's nicknamed the desert spoon for that very reason.
Oh, okay.
But when you look in here, there's the meat of
Right.
what they would actually
Right.
eat, just like you would an artichoke. And they also made unleavened bread out of it. But they would, more importantly, they would use these, they would de-thorn the long leaves and use it as a source of material for weaving baskets, hats, sandals, mats, even coffins. And then the stalk that grow out of it are very, very lightweight. They're very, very strong. They would use that as a tool for hunting and as a weapon.
It's one of those plants that provides everything or
That's
a
right.
lot of what you need.
That's right. So it was a source of, a tool, source of sustenance. It was a source of material. But most importantly, for what we'll get into today's conversation, was they actually, now archaeologists are triaging this. There are these wells out there that have evidence of fermentation and that they've dated back to 800 years ago. So keep in mind, this plant's been around used for 10,000 years, but as early as 800 years ago, that combined with some of the best cave art preserved on the planet is about 9 miles south of our ranch in southwest Texas on the Meyer Spring Ranch that show the natives actually imbibing and paying homage to the plant. There's evidence of fermentation in these wells, so they are theorizing that they discovered that they could take the cooked leaf, add water to it, and it would ferment. And you can get about a 2% beer off of this. And there was a time when 2% would get it done, right? So they would think that they were using this as an intoxicant during ceremonies. So it's the first alcoholic beverage consumed in this part of the world. And then fast forward to the 1600s, Spaniards came over, brought European distillation technology with them. Now you've got what is born as sotol. So it's what we're drinking today, or some facsimile of. And so it's a spirit that predates mezcal, it predates tequila. It's actually just got this really cool history.
And so now, obviously, the fact that it's growing in Texas, there's no geographic designation in the same way like tequila is one of those things like champagne that has to be from, they've kind of captured a district thing. So Sotol is now open.
Well, that's right. No, there is some discussion about that. So it was illegal to produce Sotol in Mexico until 1994.
Huh.
Which
Why?
I don't know the complete answer to that. I have my theories about it, but
Tequila industry, maybe?
I think that there was some political and some cultural issues there, obviously. When you think about where Sotol grows, it grows in the northern region. And where was, where did the revolution of 1915 come about? Out of the northern region, So I think that there's some cultural things there that I can't possibly understand as a Texan. But I've never been able to get anybody that actually has a clear understanding of it. But so it became legal to distill Sotol in 1994. It was never illegal to distill in the United States. However, it was first commercially distilled in the United States in El Paso in the late 19th century by a company called West Texas Sotol Products. They made industrial grade ethanol, and then they made drinkable ethanol out of Sotol. And then in the last that we could find on this company was about 1907, 1908, and then Prohibition came. And so this was all lost to Prohibition. And during Prohibition, Pancho Villa was actually running Sotol across the border for organized crime.
Oh, man, that is such an obvious and fascinating thing that probably hasn't been made.
It's just another really cool facet to the whole story of Sotol, right?
Right, and also another area of prohibition, because you got the Nucky Thompson stuff and the
the northern borders, and then coming in from Ireland, Scotland, all that stuff. But it's something you don't think about, that there must have been stuff coming across southern border during Prohibition.
Right. But then I think organized crime figured out that it's not illegal to distill in Mexico. So why aren't we distilling our vodkas and our whiskeys down there, which is a spirit that's familiar to the American consumer, and that's what actually ended up happening. But fast forward to 2002, Mexico did issue a denomination of origin for Sotol. But what governs those things are international treaties.
Right.
And so the United States, Canada, nobody else recognizes that denomination of origin.
Right. I've always thought about that because we have a friend in South Africa that's producing African agave, effectively tequila and mezcal, using agave plant that grows profusely in the southern, in the Karoo. And they're obviously not allowed to call it that, but they've got another angle on it, which I think is it's natively African agave on it. But it's a weird thing when someone, we've got these people, and you're saying it's not necessarily agreed to by American or Canadian treaty, or they don't respect it. Right. Yeah. I get people trying to protect, like the Greeks are famous for this with the olives and the feta cheese. They don't want anyone. You can't call a Kalamata olive, and even though you can grow those olives elsewhere, you can't call it that unless it comes from Kalamata. Which I get.
Everyone wants it. You've got San Marzano tomatoes that have to come from San Marzano. You've got
but also
Cheetos
every Greek who can't add two numbers together thinks they invented mathematics. So who gives a shit?
So how did you get into this? Because off air we were talking. You mentioned that when you retired from the Marine Corps. But so give us a little background of your life history and how you ended up here.
How the circuitous path of how you guys got to Austin, Texas from South Africa. It's kind of similar for me. I started off in manufacturing. I was a mechanical engineer by degree, and then. My first job out of college, I got it the old school way. For anybody out there listening who still gets the newspaper, like I still get the newspaper, I answered an ad in a newspaper with a cover letter and a resume. There used to be job postings in the newspaper, and I got the job and was making breast implants. So that was my first job out of college, and I worked there for about 2 years. Wanted to move back to Austin, so I left Silicon, went to Silicon, started making computer chips here in Oak Hill for a couple years, and then I always wanted to land on boats. That was my thing. I just I grew up in the era of Top Gun. And my dad was a pilot, and I went to air shows, and I just always wanted to be a naval aviator. I tried in the early 90s, but it was after the Gulf War, massive reduction in and downsizing in our armed forces. Bases were closed. Massive downsizing. Right. They were letting people, if you went to the service academies, they were letting them out of their commitments.
That's interesting.
And so that's how I ended up having to go get a job. And then when I was working at Motorola at the time, there was that one moment where a friend of mine who went to the service academy, his eyes somehow got better. He had the eyesight to be backseater, but he didn't have the eyesight to be a pilot. And we had always talked about in high school that we were going to end up in the same place. We were just taking different routes. He was going to go to the service academy. I was going to go to the University of Texas. And then I found out, this was before, Facebook, Snapchat, Insta, whatever, that somehow you still were able to get together. I found out that he not only his eyesight had gotten better or good enough, but he switched over from the Navy to the Marine Corps. And so I went out and visited him at an air show, and that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to go back, try again. And I submitted both package to both the Navy and the Marine Corps because it's the same flight training. And I got accepted by the Marine Corps, and I showed up to Officer Candidate School on my 27th birthday.
And that's old, right?
Yeah. For that, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're, think about it. You're running around with 21, 22-year-olds.
Yeah.
And, you've already had a career.
Right.
You just left, and everybody thinks you are absolutely freaking nuts, right? And so went off and did that. Amazing 21 years. Went by, in the blink of an eye. But
And you were a pilot?
I was.
Okay. And what were you flying?
I flew Prowlers, EA-6B Prowlers. It's a tactical carrier-based jammer. It's based off of an A6 intruder airframe.
Okay.
But as I was twilighting from that, I was kind of looking for what's the next step, right? And I was like, most people, after doing something for 21 years, that's about all you're good at. I could barely do arithmetic. So the engineering skills weren't quite there anymore. And, I had buddies that were going to the airlines, and they were making a great salary, not working, it wasn't terribly challenging, but they weren't really fulfilled. And so, I told my wife, I was like, hey, why don't I, I've run some really large organizations in the Marine Corps. Why don't I go back to business school, and learn how to talk to the private sector and, and see what that offers. What doors does that open? And that's where I met my two co-founding partners, Navy SEAL, Judson Kaufman, and Army Intel guy, Ryan Campbell. And, we hit it off right out of the gate. Military guys tend to have, good, nice shared values. And then one thing I did learn from business school is that business school does not either A, teach you how to start a business, nor does it teach you how to run a business. But it teaches you a lot about business. And the reason why you go back to these places, it's a center of gravity, right? So you think about Austin, think about all the types of personalities and everything that Austin attracts, right?
Yeah.
And even it's changed in the 30 plus years that I've lived here, it's still an amazing center of gravity for the types of, personalities that it attracts. Same thing at the university. And, but we took this class called New Venture Creation. And as it sounds, it's like, it's like, how do you start a business? And you form a team, the team becomes a company. You have to come up with an idea. You do the market research, market validation, put the pro formas on it, what's your go-to-market, what's your exit strategy, business plan, and a pitch deck. And there's no tests in the class per se. There's spot checks of your progress. But the class culminates with you pitching your idea to a panel of would-be investors. Now, all of these folks at the table, judges, are active investors at some level in the community, but there's no monies exchanging hands in this class. They're just evaluating how well did you think through this process, and what's the likelihood of your your business prospect. And so Ryan and I were the first. We were going down doing what graduate students do. You want to tackle solving the world's problems, right? And so,
and how old are you at this point?
This
is because after the Marines.
Yeah, no, I'm still active duty in the Marine Corps at this time. So I'm 46 at this time. And I was flying a desk at a joint job at Lackland Air Force Base, San Antonio. So I'm the senior Marine in Southwest Texas, and kind of just my own island down there on an Air Force base. And but back on the course, we were, based on my partner Ryan's experience in consulting and my engineering background and aviation background, we were going to develop a Federal Express or UPS with no pilots. We were going to do cargo drones. That was our idea. Which, that's going to come.
Oh, yeah. It just sounds like you were 10 years
10
early.
years and a couple of billion short.
Yeah.
10 years and a couple billion. But, hey, and then Judson, showed up, the voice of reason. He was like, guys, this is the only class in this entire curriculum that we get to choose what we work on. Could we at least do something cool, or is this the best we can do? And I was like, I'm not married to this, man. What do you want to do? And he goes, well, I always want to start a distillery. And I was like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. He's like, well, what do you want to make? It's like, I don't know, but let's figure something out. And so we went through all these ideas. We knew one thing for sure, which was really we leveraged heavily in our business plan. So I'm going to put Texas on the spot here with my Greek South African compatriots. Did y'all, before y'all moved to the States, did y'all know what the shape of Texas looked like? Were you familiar with the state of Texas?
Probably not before we moved.
Oh, not before we moved. I was,
I mean, I was.
Yeah.
He was young. You guys were young, but
you were doing geography classes.
Yeah. Also, I don't know. Texas is, it's iconic.
Well, that's the thing. It's we were because we're trying to do this on the cheap, and part of our marketing plan was that leveraging what is given to us and where we are.
Yeah.
Texas was the global brand. And so we're we want to do something that is uniquely Texas. And they're like, okay, now what? We're like, you're going to be another vodka? That's not exactly, Texan. I mean, God bless, y'all know him as Tito. I call him the Godfather, but, God bless him. But, there's nothing that was uniquely, Texan. We couldn't find in this very, very short compressed timeline, how can we spin something, and make it a true Texas spirit? And so as we went through, like, I mean, I was born in a little town called Sweetwater. This is how crazy some of the ideas were. I was like, let's make the coolest, most badass bourbon you can possibly, put on your lips, and we're going to call it Sweetwater. And there's the entendre, right? That was my idea. You can tell I'm a marketing genius, right? And so as we started going through all of these iterations, a friend of ours came back from Mexico, and he's like, man, have you guys heard of this thing called Ricea? And we're like, no, what's that?
Oh, yeah.
And so, it's another one of those, regional kind of esoteric agave-based spirits. It's another mezcal, but it's regional. And we're like, well, what is that? And he's like, it's fantastic. And so, guys, at this time, we're just trying to get a grade, okay, where there's no idea that we're going to step out from the abstract into the market space. And I had sold everybody. It's like, okay, we're going to get some of this Ricea, and we're going to do kind of like what Sammy Hagar did with Cabo Wabo tequila. Right. Find, your favorite, like, local mom and pop purveyor, help them scale up and distribute. And then that's what I sold the team. I was like, it's super easy. We'll be able to research around that. And then, so through several iterations of that, and then also another friend of ours in the classroom, whose family started the first winery here in the state of Texas. And his brother was also a co-founder at one of the meteoric rise of vodkas here just down the street.
Deep Heady.
Yeah. And so he knows the space. He was going down to the same spot in Mexico. And we're like, hey, dude, get us a bottle of that Ricea. We want to try it. And because at the time, you can get Ricea, at a lot of spots here now.
Yeah.
But at the time, 7 years ago, it was a little bit more challenging. And so we're like, hey, dude, get us a bottle of that Ricea. And he was like, all right. Well, he came back. He was like, couldn't find it. And we're like, what? He goes, no, couldn't find it. We're like, oh, crap, now what? And so, and Judson, in his, cursory search on the Google, as he was looking through Ricea, other, types of spirits started popping up, like Bacanora and then Sotol. And he's from East Texas, but he spent a lot of time in Southwest Texas as a kid. And he goes, I wonder if that's that Soto, like no L, Soto, that my uncle and his friends used to moonshine when I was a kid. And turns out that it was. And then that's where we started digging back on so when you go into like all of your liquor stores, they've all got, hopefully very lovely packaging with a, great artwork and a backstory, right?
Right.
And hopefully the liquid inside of it, matches that. But that's where we started like going, oh, we don't have to create a backstory. This is the story.
Right, yeah.
And so that's what, we're trying to tell is like in every one of those blue bottles, it's like, it's up to the consumer, right? Like, where do they want to get off? Do they just want to have a great cocktail, or do they want to go on the journey? But it wasn't so we pitched this, once we figured out that Sotol actually grows here, that's when things changed. Because my partner, Ryan, I was like, oh, great. I knew that there was a handful of distilleries in Mexico that were making Sotol. I was like, we'll do the same thing.
With the idea with the Ricea.
And Ryan was like, nope. And I'm like, what? He goes, it grows here. I want to make it. And I'm like, dude, you do realize that's like a completely different problem set, right? Not just like somebody that already knows how to do this, but it was like, agri-supply chain, where are you going to get the plants? And he goes, it grows here. We're going to make it. I'm like, all right. And so there we went down on that road. But we're still thinking about just getting a grade. All he did was add 2 layers of complexity to our business plan because, one, we had to figure out an agri-supply chain, which we didn't do very well. We got grilled on that in the classroom. But then we also had to have now a distillery where we had to cook and process and ferment and distill. It wasn't just like,
Yeah, no.
So now we had a capital problem, CapEx issue now. And then so when we pitched our idea, got the highest grade in the class, by the way. One of the panelists came up to us and said, hey, guys, are y'all serious about this? And we're like, kind of looking at each other. I'm like, no. She goes, because me and my husband want to talk to you about investing if you're really serious about this. And I was retiring in a year. I didn't have a job, So I was like, I don't got a gig. Let's give this a go. But the crazy thing is I had to tell the wife. It's like, because that's not what I sold her on about going back to business school. Like, hey, what do you think about starting a distillery, dear? And she's like, oh, yeah, that's cute. That sounds great. And then I'm like, oh.
Well, especially with such an esoteric thing like Sotol.
Yeah, they're like, you want to make booze out of what? And they're like, and do you have any experience doing that?
Right,
like,
yeah.
No, but we're going to figure it out. And so that's what we did. But we knew from that classroom experience, because it's such a compressed timeline, it is, velvet gloves, light touch on the, so think of it like Shark Tank, but,
Right.
Very, very light
Yeah.
touch from the, we knew we did not have all of the research and like where are all of the friction points in this? Where can this possibly go wrong? And so we had to go through that again. So we knew we could not tell the world that this is what we're going to do until we like really dug in on it. And so that's what we did. We took all the feedback from the classroom, and then while we're still in class, because we have another year to go in business school, that's all we were started to do in our spare time. Grades and everything else suffered. I mean, barely made it through the second year because they're like, okay, this is what we're doing. Came back to business school to figure out what we're doing. Now this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so had to talk my partner Ryan out of like not quitting. He was like ready to quit. And like, because he was like, I came back to business school to figure out what I was doing. I know.
Right.
No, I know that feeling because I went to music school for 13 months and then, it's like at a certain point you're like, well, I'm doing music. Like, this is it. I'm doing it.
Yeah, you know how to do it, right?
Yeah.
And so we went back, did more research, polished up every aspect that we possibly could that we understood. And then we entered our business plan and pitch deck in what's called the Texas Venture Labs Investment Competition. And this is where the kid gloves come off. And it's a much more hostile environment because there is actual monies exchanging hands here. And so if you submit your plan and you get accepted, you are now make it onto the second round. And then there was 5 groups where you had to pitch again. And if you won your group, you got to go into the final round. And then out of 50 entrants, we ended up placing third, or as we call it, first loser, or second loser. But we ended up getting a $2,000 check out of that. And that was our first money. We were like, oh, people actually, and so at this time, we're actually teaching ourselves how to make this stuff. There's no YouTube videos out there on how to harvest this plant, cook the plant, steam. I mean,
Right.
And so we were jumping people's fence north of San Antonio, and we're stealing plants under the cover of dusk, and chunking them in the trunk of my buddy's car, and teaching ourselves how to cook. We tried roasting it in the oven, threw it on a green egg. We ended up settling on steam for a couple of reasons. One, we were afraid of drying out the plant.
Right.
And then we got to thinking about it too. The steam doesn't add any adjuncts, so it's like a really clean articulation of the plant flavor profile.
Right.
From front to back,
Yeah.
so there's nothing added into it. The challenge there was like figuring out how to do it because it doesn't, this won't fit in a stovetop pressure cooker.
Right.
But it does if you buy a wood chipper off Craigslist. And so that's what we did. We bought a wood chipper off Craigslist. And you take this thing, chop it up, blow it through the wood chipper, put it in a cheesecloth bag. Fits quite nicely in the stovetop pressure cooker. And then Ryan had an undergraduate degree in microbiology, so he could like read scientific reports. And so we studied and kind of learned how to ferment. And so like do homebrew buckets. And on class weekends, we ran a little kettle in my garage. My daughter came home one weekend from school while I was running the still. And she's like, oh my God, our house looks like Breaking Bad. And so that was running the still in the garage.
Oh, wow.
The summer or October of 16, I believe.
You'll have to send me that so we can throw it up
Yeah.
and do some clips.
I'll send a few pics of it, but that's what the...
And that is that a pot still or what is that?
That's actually a column still.
Column still, okay.
Yeah, and so that's what the little guys.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And so the tube length, right, and the temperature and all that determines your proof and all that kind of, and how many.
Yeah, no, it's kind of funny when we got into that. We didn't know squat about this. I mean, we're worried about blowing ourselves up. We're worried about going blind, all that stuff. And, so we had to teach ourselves how to distill first and foremost. And so there's a lot of, recipes out there. So we made different types of, a couple different vodkas, a couple different whiskey mash bills, just to kind of like figure out like, okay, can we actually get alcohol to come off this thing? And then the trick was like, the Sotol was another thing. I still remember the first time I saw it's called up the parrot, and you can see the alcohol coming up. And I was like, holy shit, that's Sotol, man.
Right, yeah.
And we weren't very good at it at first. Oh my God. It's like, it was smooth, but it smelled like socks. I mean, it was terrible. Probably something like you.
That's what the socks reference is. What the first Sotol I tried.
So how do you control what aromatics get into the still?
That actually has a lot to do with how you're cooking it and the fermentation aspect of it. And then and the refinement. So the way we distill is, so for those out there in the universe that don't know how distillation works, it's effectively like making beer. So like through the cooking and the processing and the fermentation, and we don't pasteurize, but we make, so those tanks are like unpasteurized beer, if you will. And then what we do with distillation is alcohol boils at a lower vapor point than water. So what you're doing is you're boiling the alcohol out of your beer.
Right.
And the high volatile compounds, the methyls, the ones that typically, we talk about make you go blind, when they just taste horrible. Has anybody siphoned gasoline before?
Oh yeah.
Have you ever been on the wrong end of that?
Oh yeah, I've done a couple shots of gasoline.
Yeah, well, that's what like those methyls do. They dry out like every mucous membrane in your head.
Yeah.
And it's got this really foul, like sour green apple flavor to it.
Yeah.
But those start coming off at about 145 degrees Fahrenheit. Don't make me do Celsius, but
Right.
And then it's not till you get in. Every still is a little bit different, but on ours it's about 174 degrees, which is where you start getting into the hearts. So that's first part of that's called the heads. Then you get into the hearts, and then you get into the tails. And some of where you get those really funky notes, whether it's like blue cheese, which would be like the socks, or some of the other funky like aromatics, those are typically down in the tails. And that's where...
Sorry, what does that mean, down in the tails?
Tails, so that's where you're starting, as you're going up in temperature, you're getting more and more water. So every time you distill, you're removing impurities or water, right? The water equates to impurities. The impurities equate to flavor.
Right.
But they also have aromatics in it. Yeah.
I don't want to force your own product on you, but if you want to.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I kind of want to taste stuff while.
So if you were to distill at a low enough temperature, you would get effectively ethanol.
No, we do, and that's what you do get. But the how you do that is like you want to control. You don't want to like heat it up too quickly. There's a sweet spot of maintaining a good pressure balance in your column, so that you're getting every aspect out of it that you want. And this is where the jargon of cooking. So distillation it's cooking. There's like a little of this, a little of that. There's no right, wrong, rhyme, reason way of doing it. It's truly like how do you enjoy it, and then can you replicate that? Whereas like beer making, it's like baking. I mean, it is science.
Yeah, you
very, very precise. That's
no
why
improvisation or
none whatsoever. And that's why your first beer tastes like your millionth, tastes like your 10 millionth, because it's that precise. But to your point, when you get closer and closer, like as you're getting in the high 190s and like in the 200s, that's when you're getting more and more water in there.
Right.
Since there's more water in the final distillate, there's more flavor, more impurities, and that's where you're going to get a lot of those aromatic stuff. And so that's really up to you, like how deep do you want to go to get that?
But the mash, you're effectively also involved in the beer making process because you're trying to keep your mash consistent.
That's right.
Okay, so but you're just saying that the cooking process after that is more just subjective.
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
How does the beer taste? Like the first process of that. Did you make any of that and try it?
No, we actually flavor one of the cocktails with it. So if anybody that's in or ever visits the Austin area and you come out to see us in Driftwood, it's one of 2 cocktails and now 3 that will endure on the menu since we opened. The two that have endured since we opened is our Paloma, which is effectively a grapefruit margarita, and what we call the Comanchero, which is a margarita, but it's sweetened with the nectar of the cooked plants before we ferment. So the sugar water that comes off the plant, that's what we ferment with, and it's brown and caramely. And just tasting that, it's kind of like a coffee liqueur meets balsamic vinegar.
I was about to say coffee. This is fucking incredible.
Have you not had it?
Not this one. I've not had the.
You've had the original, the
Probably, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the same liquid. Both of them are the same liquid. So when it comes off the still, it's about 150 to 155 proof total. And I cut it down to 80 to make what you've already had, or then we cut it down to 120 where it then goes into a barrel. And so we use virgin oak, medium char barrels, and virgin meaning it's the first time that any alcohol's ever been in the barrel. And it stays in there for a minimum of a year. And there's no aging statements associated with Sotol. But also, unlike, like whiskeys, specifically bourbons, it has to go in there minimally 2 years to be called a bourbon. But also, the liquid that's going in there is not, now there is some good shine out there, but it's hard to find good moonshine. Typically, the liquid that's going in those barrels is not palatable. We're putting drinkable liquid in the barrel, so we're not actually just trying to completely alter the landscape. I'm just trying to add layers of nuance to the spirit. So that's where, you obviously get the color, but you get the coffee, the caramel, the vanilla, the leather aspect, but there's still those vegetal, earthy undertones in the spirit. And that's what we're trying not to lose, because you can truly over oak this.
And one of the things I'm most curious about, because I have a farm in Wimberley and we grow vegetables and all sorts of things down there. And it says wild harvested, but is it still all wild harvested? Are you starting to grow it?
So regenerative processes is something that's extremely core to the company. So we have like our three core values at Desert Door are originality, authenticity, and connection. And one of the things that like really truly got us with, we were kind of before the show, we were talking about connection, and there's no way to get more connected with the land than what we're drinking. This was like the original spirit. It was a live plant theoretically 11 days ago, and so by regenerative, the way we harvest, first and foremost, no cultivation, there's no water, there's no fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, any other sides associated with the plant that goes into it. And the way that we harvest is we've developed kind of like an industrial chef's mandolin, if you will, to where we'll go in and we'll trim all the leaves off of the plant, leave them there to help with soil erosion. And then we go in and we pop the heart of the plant. So you can see on the bottom of this where it's, and we leave the root structure in the ground, giving the plant the opportunity to regenerate.
Oh, okay.
And another cool thing about this plant is that there's two species. There's a male and a female.
Okay.
And one seeds, one pollinates. How they get together, it's crazy. When specifically when you go out and look where this plant grows and thrives, we don't harvest, the plants have to be, this would be like the smallest one that you would ever see. Okay. So it has to be a mature plant, and it does it gives you like these little indications on the leaves that it is a mature plant, but it also has to be of size, and it can't be in any form of bloom. Because this plant will, unlike agaves, it will bloom multiple times throughout its lifespan, and we need that plant to do that to promulgate the species. But also, if it's in any form of bloom, the plant is pulling in all of its sugars in from its core to push the stalk up. So all of that sugar is going in, and energy is going to push that stalk up, and so it's a double whammy, if you will. One, it's trying to procreate, and then by the way, you're not going to get the yields out of it that you would hope, because all the sugars are up in the stalk.
So, what kind of timeline are you looking at from the beginning of a plant as a seedling or whatever is that even
My
the correct
understanding
term?
It's about 13 years.
13 years to when they're harvestable.
So how much land, what's the land that you're harvesting from? Is it land that you own, you lease, or
it's a combination of both. So we have an 8,000 acre ranch out in southwest Texas, but we also have agreements with ranchers out there. It gives us access to about 40,000 acres.
Wow.
So you can think of it like if you're an oil person so surface rights are mineral rights.
Right.
We actually have SOTOL rights with those guys that allow us to come out there and harvest the plant. And so in some respects, I mean, this, I'll show some of the pictures I'm going to send you is like, there's two different mindsets out there. Truly, there are folks like, do not ever get rid of this plant because this plant will save you in time of drought.
Right.
But there's other folks out there in time of drought. This is a succulent.
Right.
And so, I mean, water is a precious commodity out there.
Yeah.
So there's two different schools of thought on that.
Is there any other use industrially or commercially that people are using Sotol for? Like, have you got competition for getting those plants? Is it used for agriculture or like livestock feeding in any way?
What we do with our byproduct after we're done with the cereal, so kind of end-to-end processing, like what comes off of this plant it's called bagasse. And so you can see these little fibers, and that's what's left at the end of this. And it's very, very strong, very fibrous, and we generate a lot of it. And nutritionally, obviously off the charts fiber, vitamins, minerals, there's very little protein or energy to speak of in it, but we give it to a animal feed producer, it's a couple counties over, and uses this as a nutritious filler for the animal feed. And so that's what we do with ours.
Okay. So, yeah, but I guess, so there's not, like, you're the main person, or your company is that's interested in
That's
harvesting Sotol.
Right. We've had a lot of folks that took interest, like, oh, there's something new and shiny. Let's go take a look and see what they're doing.
Yeah.
But the second they figure out that, like 10 minutes in the distillery and they don't want to do it,
Yeah.
it's hard.
Yeah.
And
But this is so good. This is like
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
The combination of
it's almost
like
like a
tequila and whiskey.
and rum. There's a kind
yeah.
of rum thing going on, but it's none of those things. It's like a.
If you gave it to me for the first time, I wouldn't be able to tell you what it is.
Dude, I'm making a tiramisu for Saturday. I'm going to use this. I'm going to
It
use
could be
this.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of
that
rum.
never occurred to me.
Yeah.
Makes great old fashions. Also can liven up your coffee too.
Yeah. Well, it just seems like it goes. It's like tiramisu goes coffee. Obviously, like a.
Now this is what I've been like the coffee can. This is my new Red Bull vodka.
It's too bad. I just cut out coffee this week.
Oh, loser.
I know. It's
Why are you torturing yourself?
Just so that you can
because-
go back to it.
because for the week before that, I was just drinking too much, and I think I got into a cycle where it's a downward spiral. I think it's like if you imagine that you've got a certain amount of energy in your body, I've got to the point where I was tipping over the edge of that, and I was just running on fumes, fueled by coffee, and it catches up with you.
I did
No, it
that
starts
for
to hurt.
Yeah.
I did that for
I'll be back, don't worry.
few months.
Yeah.
It definitely works. I did that for a few months, and it definitely works. It resets you. It's basically the only reason to be an ascetic is to be more of a hedonist. It's like you just want to
That's right.
increase the contrast. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like anything. The first time you've come back after some weeks of taking something off, I've told you guys this, but I also was off coffee for a few weeks, and then I had coffee one morning, but I'd forgotten I'd had it, and I was driving in California down to the beach, and I just felt so euphoric. I was like, this is what life's about. And I couldn't figure out, I'm like, how do I feel so just happy. Everything. I'm going to the beach, I'm driving to things, and then I realized, oh yeah, I had coffee for the first time in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I should probably take a break. But one thing we did when we did a little kitchen project, treated ourselves with a really nice espresso machine.
Oh yeah.
That completely changes your coffee game.
Oh no, yeah, that's my problem. I've got one of these guys bought me one for my wedding gift.
Yeah.
It's it just makes espresso. That's it. But
Yeah.
it's a really good one. In fact, you got one. We just
we're
pass them
trading
around.
wedding gifts. We're just
when
trading.
Danny gets married, he'll get one.
Regifting
Yeah.
So next turn you're going to get
I've got the one we bought for the album.
Well, in fact, that was literally when we signed a record deal. It wasn't $1 million contract, but it was a lot of money to us, and that was the first thing we bought.
Coffee,
Remember?
yeah.
Well,
Well,
we bought some Lafroig 18. I don't know if you're familiar with.
no,
Like,
we were
we're-
talking about single malts.
yeah, that's. We've
But rock
still
and roll
got
has
two
changed. Like people used to live really on the edge and live 3 lifetimes in one and get albums done. But we were after touring on that lunatic cycle. We were trying to finish a new album, and being the good boys that we are. Coffee was the extent of our.
Yeah, no. If that's the extent of your hedonism, that's you're doing right.
That's the extent of our podcast hedonism.
That's right. And I was about to say, I don't know how guys like Kiss did it. They were doing an album every 9 months and on the road.
Yeah.
I watched
and they were clean.
Well,
he
Gene
was.
and Paul.
Yeah.
Right.
Did
Two
you
of
see
them
that
were.
documentary on Leonard Skinner?
No.
Dude, watching that
Painful.
gave me liver pain.
Yeah.
Like you talk about partying, like this just doesn't exist. I mean, now I guess rappers and like young rock bands now are on pills and like all the opioids and that, but like just drinking, partying.
But you know who's an
those guys-
underestimated party band is the Eagles. They are the craziest fuckers on earth, and it's just that they because of that soft rock thing, people don't realize how insane they are.
Did you hear Joe talk about when he quit drinking?
No.
Yeah, he said he woke up at the Paris airport on an airplane, and he had no idea how he got there. So
Well, it's that
that's when
song,
Joe-
"Life's Been Good to Me."
which is amazing.
yeah, it's an awesome song.
Because it's true.
Yeah.
I have accountants pay for it all. Just a fucking incredible line. Our good friend in Arizona, Tato, amazing artist. I remember he's a true artist. This guy kind of resembles a Salvador Dali painting, although now he's graduated into.
No, see it, but the dresses aren't melting.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
He's and he kind of actually is that way in real life. You feel like you've just had a bunch of this when you're talking to him. He's just got this wavy thing. Even though now he's highly successful, paints huge murals, great artist. I remember him saying that to me. I ran into him downtown. He says, "Man, I woke up in Prescott yesterday, and I just don't know how I got there."
Yeah.
So let me just share the screen. We'll take a quick break. There's a couple more questions. I want to talk about the Sotol and everything, but I wanted to tell this story because there's this stupid website, studyfinds.org, which is, they should not allow certain things to have a .org because it gives it an air of like authenticity to it. But anyway, it's one of these studies done by who the hell knows. Average person hasn't spoken to neighbors in 3 weeks, but regularly bash them online. So that seems fairly accurate because there's a definite disconnect starting to happen, and we felt it. I think, particularly being in LA. Not that we had good friends out there, but it's such a giant city. There's a disconnect that happens, particularly during the pandemic. The other day, my zero-turn mower broke down. I don't know anything about engines, and I don't have the time to get into it. I've got to figure out these engines here in the studio. So my wife posted on Nextdoor, which is usually the funniest social media website. It's just a bunch of like really old people arguing about like some kid did something on their lawn sort of thing.
No, my dad, he should start his own site, get off my lawn.
But she posted, "Hey, any recommendations?" Because all the people I call were like 6-week waits to just get someone to come look at it. A neighbor, literally like 6 houses down, replied, "Yeah, we'll ride our bikes over. I do it as a side job." Came over. By that night, he had picked it up, driven it over to his house. He has a lift. He's going to fix it. He's going to be back tonight. And I said, I'll just make up a number. Whatever you want to get paid in labor, let me pay. He's like, no, just give me some cookies or something.
Oh, he's going to fix it for free? I didn't get that
No,
part.
he's not going to fix it for free because I'm going to pay him. There's no way he's not getting paid for doing that. But he just does it as a side thing. He's an engineer and he knows engines and knows how to do it. It was just a belt that had come off. Like I should know how to be able to fix it myself, but I'm busy. But it was just like this community that's we're visiting or newcomers to out in Hill Country is, I actually think, remarkable. I've not felt the kind of helpfulness and like actual genuine neighborliness in a long, long time that we're experiencing out here.
I've been having similar thoughts because when I first moved here, I thought I was in a fucking cartoon show because I just got done with a 12-hour drive with my girlfriend and our dog who was throwing up in the car and all this kind of shit. Show up to the house, have barely, kind of got this place on like in a rush, like everyone who was doing that kind of shit. And show up and then like 9 neighbors come out of the woodworks and they're like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I was like, "What the fuck? Let me just get here off, let me just get into my house and I'll meet you in a day, give me a day." And initially I was kind of like, this is too much like Ned Flanders from The Simpsons. But now I was in the wrong mindset. I wasn't used to that.
Right.
And, my neighbor who I thought was really annoying and nosy, now I just he's just a fucking neighbor. I wasn't used to that shit. I wasn't used to like someone actually being genuinely concerned about me, even though they didn't know me. And so, like,
it's interesting. You guys have been talking about on the previous podcast, the Henry Miller, Hieronymus, the Oranges of Hieronymus Bosch, and he talks I've just started listening to it now, in the very first hour of the book on tape or audiobook that I've been listening to, about the idea of community. He says that the idea of community forms when individuals in themselves have a state of mind that is giving and generous. Then a community forms. It's not some like abstract idea of like we need to form this structure like a government,
Right. It's an emergent phenomena.
Yes, it's a phenomenon that
it.
comes secondary to individuals being in a good state of being to be helpful to one another. And it was just such a weird coincidence. I listened to that. This neighbor shows up on his bicycle, teaches me how to, put a belt back on my lawnmower.
Yeah, this very similar thing with my 85-year-old neighbor Marilyn, but who keeps a 38 on her bedside. She's lovely lady, and the guy who works for Tesla, young guy, mows her lawn every week for her. Yeah. And it's just like, that shit doesn't fucking exist in a lot of places. I mean, I know it does around the world in all sorts of places, but there's a lot of places completely missing that sensation, that feeling.
That's one of the reasons we're still in the neighborhood that we're in. We've been there, be 16 years.
Yeah.
We've been in the same house, and we're empty nesters now. Got me, wife, 3 large dogs, but we've got way too much house, and the only reason we're really still there is the neighbors. We really like our neighbors.
Yeah.
That, and I told her after moving 18 times in the Marine Corps, it's like I've got one move left in me.
Right.
And that's where you're going to haul me out. And so it's no more incremental upgrades. It's going to be, this is
the final one.
Final
a very
spot.
Small room.
That's right. Less house, more space.
I think it's people have grown up in it. That's the only, and we're newcomers to it, but people have grown up into it. And so it's a value that basically they've, that's been instilled in them, and it's a genuine value. Like in our neighborhood, I'm a little more out in the country, and so we're down about a mile or 2 of a dirt road, and we all maintain the road privately together. And the other day I had not related to the road, but my neighbor texted the group and said, "Hey, I could really use a hand right now. My goat's got her head stuck in the fence, and I can't get it out of the fence." So I drove up there with some bolt cutters and got her goat out of the fence.
Yeah.
Well, you say we didn't grow up with. We're newcomers to Austin or to Texas, but this is what South Africa felt like to us in the Greek community. It was that. Then Phoenix, for whatever reason, I'm sure it does exist there. We just it never happened. We never made that kind of connection growing up in Phoenix, and then LA never felt that way. I mean, it's like LA gets a bad rap. It's not as bad, I think, as people imagine it to be, and it also is what people imagine it to be. It's a mixture. But then, something happened. There's too many experiences out here where it's just like there's too many nice people for it's not a fake
But there's also
phenomenon.
this weird degree of competency in everything that people do, which is, first of all, feels like it puts a bit of pressure on you because you realize, I don't want to be a fucking nothing. When you meet people who can do shit, like everyone does shit. Like everyone I meet at my dog park, like Harvey, he's a psychiatrist assistant or whatever he does in his normal job. But then you talk about music, he's like, he builds amps and he repairs guitars and he does all this shit. And, it's inspiring. Like I moved here and I was like, I don't want to not know how to build shit. So I built my little deck, or I built my, it's just annoying to feel like a non-person,
like a Twitter person who's got a lot of opinions and can't make anything.
If you can Jesus, it's really you really want to not be an internet person. And I don't mean someone who contributes to the internet in a legitimate way via programming or app development or whatever. I just mean a person who's a consumer of the internet. It's the most depressing state to be in.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of dopamine in those likes, though.
Got to get them. Yeah. So we do a segment we typically at the end, I'm not trying to cut the conversation off, but where we talk about music, I sent you, I don't know if you did your homework.
Oh, that was pretty easy, actually.
Yeah. So we talk obviously about a song and or a lyric that's been really sticking out to us, and I'll go first and we can get into it. So there's a bunch of artists that have been blowing up through Yellowstone now. Just like it's if you could get a sync on Yellowstone, there's almost no other.
It's like the Hills of today.
Yeah.
That show, The Hills,
I saw this band called Texas Gentlemen, and they're the backup band for Ryan Bingham, the guy who plays the.
Okay, right.
They were fucking incredible.
Yeah,
They
he's
were
really cool. Also,
Yeah.
because I was watching the show, going, this guy's miming too well for it to be fake, and then obviously he's an artist before it. But there's also Coulter Wall, who I think one of you guys introduced me to a song called Cowpoke, and the lyrics from his song, because there's been a long time of like fake cowboy, like Western thing where it just comes across like someone, I don't know, in Malibu manufacturing that. Here's the lyric from his song Cowpoke. I ain't got a dime in these old worn out jeans, so I'll stop eating steak and I'll go back to beans. I'll pick up a 10 spot in Prescott. I know riding the Bronx in the big rodeo. Like I just believe him, even though from someone else I might say like, oh, stop trying to pretend that like you're in the 30s and that, you know, like you're coming out of the dust bowl.
Someone told AI, write me a song.
Yeah, like he just comes across like, even if I don't know his story. Maybe he's not personally lived as like a cowboy working that thing, but like there's just a believability and an authenticity to it that comes across.
Yeah, I can't speak to that either, but I can tell you Taylor Sheridan is no bullshit. That guy's a
a
cowboy.
Yeah, I mean that. Well, he's
just bought 4-6's ranch, right?
Yeah, but I tell you what, watching him ride, he's a badass.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
But also, what's interesting about that guy is, you know, it says 3 lifetimes in one or more kind of people. You know, like Quincy Jones is one of those guys. I always go back to Quincy Jones because it just feels like, how could someone possibly do that much? He's a same way. Like, is there a fucking show that he's not producing? Like, what is going? It doesn't make any sense. It's like, has he cloned himself or something like that? I don't know.
Some people just have more hours in the day than the rest of us.
Yeah.
Well, that and Byron, I knew him on from a '70s show. Dude that was like owns the Weather Channel and was gonna like buy the Denver Broncos. I
don't know him, but
yeah.
No, Sid, I wonder. This is a question for you, because we've met a lot of people like that, and there is a military background often there. I find that where it's like if you're presented with great adversity, like real adversity, then other things become easier for you. So that then to like the average person is looking at you going like, how are you working 6 jobs and building an empire and doing this, and then you're distilling Sotol, and like you've built this thing. And we like talking with Ben, who grew up on a farm in negative 45 degree things in Canada, and it's like that's just not, certain things are just not difficult when you've seen real difficulty, and I think that's a problem that most people we have, even as Westerners and like city dwellers, is like things are too easy. And
is it a physical thing? Because I can't remember who this person was, but they were talking about the idea that how they would hire for their company, and they said like, it's not as what you'd think. It'd be like were they on the wrestling team, etc. In high, what degree of physical adversity were they exposed to, and I think as like AI advances and as certain intellectual tasks are out of the depth of the human mind, where it's going to be this black box of how things get done, how everything gets done is going to be some elite intellectuals who understand how to organize these systems, and then the rest of us will just be using these systems. The emphasis on the body, I think, is going to come back. And not that it's necessarily gone away, but the people who have conditioned their body, that's its own intelligence. Right. And the making the body subservient will maybe be rediscovered. Because that's what I feel in myself. I feel like I've been physically lazy my whole life. And I only now, even though I've been told a billion times by everyone, stop being such a lazy piece of shit. I only now kind of value it. And I only now value the idea of making my body a little more subservient to me so that it's less of a hindrance in whatever I'm trying to do in my life, which obviously you understand through military.
Yeah. But that was also prescribed too. That's one thing you cannot do in the United States Marine Corps is when you get on the scale, it better look just right. Because if it doesn't, it's a real problem.
Pretty much a runway model.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you better tape out if you're not.
This might be I don't know how involved or aware of the policies you still are, but we did a gig at a Kitsap Naval Base up in Bremerton, Washington, where they've got the nukes and everything.
So I learned how to fly. The jet that I flew, I was up at Whidbey Island, Washington. Just 4 months out of the year, it's beautiful.
So when we were up there, the people that were taking us around, giving us the tour and like organizing the event, they were complaining that standards had dropped, and this was for Navy, so I know it's different. Like, is it still pretty stringent on the Marine side? It
is, but you got to think about we're not a conscripted service.
Right.
So, I mean, we're an all volunteer service, and we are just another facet of society, and And, we also serve at the political will of, whatever prevailing winds are going on in Washington, D.C. Yeah. So those societal changes, they do tend to weave their way into the fabric, and it's really challenging.
Yeah, because I can remember she was telling us for this particular
she was the trainer.
I don't want to speak out of line.
She was the trainer, yeah.
Yeah, it was something like I want to say a 12-minute mile.
Something like that, yeah.
Something where it was like, I can do that. Like, if I can do it, it should be better than what I can do.
Yeah, it's hard to. I think she was being literal, but it was hard to see if she was.
Yeah, I don't
tell if she was just
don't
being
quote me
like,
on that number, but it was interesting to hear that they were having such a hard time filling positions in certain parts of the military. They had to lower its standards.
There are some standard issues. I think regardless of what professional pipeline you're trying to fill.
Yeah.
I saw that on the tail end of mine. As I was segueing out, a lot of young folks were finding out this was the first time in their life that they weren't good enough.
Right. Yeah. I found that out pacing him on a bike when he was running marathons, because he ran a 4:30 mile or whatever he ran, and then he was running, and I was like, this is hard on a bike. This fucking guy's running this shit.
I saw a video today of the guys that they're pacing their marathons out, and they're running 4:30 miles, and it said, guess this pace. Someone said, guess this pace, and everyone's like, 6-7 minutes, and like they're running at a full sprint for 2 hours.
Yeah, no, I'm not running like I used to.
Yeah.
But, there's just, you got to think about the consequences there, right? There's certain vocations where when things go bad, they go real bad, right? And you want, type A, very, very driven people to be your engineers, your doctors, those types of things, or in your military, right?
Yeah.
Because if things are going bad, the consequences can be significant, right?
Yeah, that the kind of tolerance for sloppiness makes its way into the weirdest corners of society, to the point where it even applies. Last 6 months I've been obsessed with pool. I just play pool any chance I can get.
Come over. We just put one in over at the distiller. Come over.
Okay, I will definitely do that.
Just say the word pool.
Yeah. But I was playing with my British friend, and the British are usually good at pool. It's part of their culture. And the game ended, and I was trying to figure out a draw issue on the cue ball. I didn't understand why I was drawing back differently. Mm-hmm. And this lady goes, it's not that serious. It's not like, And I was like, yeah, it's not serious. I'm not.
But she wasn't playing the game.
No, she wasn't playing the game. And it was just like, you're right. It's not serious. This is fun to me. Mm-hmm. The precision, I'm interested in this. Like, why are you trying to make me like you? You play the game in your way, and I play the game because I like this aspect of it. And it's not at all weird. And to be interested in something and interested in the specifics is not weird. It's not and I found it was like, what is the point of that kind of existence?
All right, so let me finish on my the song that I picked, not for lyrics. It was Willie Nelson's 90th birthday, Saturday, 2 days back. I think I've talked about this song before, but he has an album of covers of classic, even jazz, like the American Songbook, and he has a cover of September song that is amazing. And it sounds like Willie Nelson, but September song, which you'll know if you hear it. It's a classic, American songbook. And he's just such a, we were saying legend, you said icon. That it's like whatever the apex of the pyramid is, he's just one of the coolest and greatest musicians.
There's a great documentary about his guitar. It's like a 13-minute little mini doc. Trigger, yes. That's fucking... his guitar is like a microcosm of him.
There's not another guitar that sounds like that. There can't be. When you look at the holes in that thing and how threadbare that is.
But also just how it kind of just is him. It's like this like shadow of him. It's so cool.
Extension of him, yeah.
So why don't we go right? You want to go next?
Yeah, sure. We can do Brent last. I've been listening to a bunch of Billy Joel lately, and I'm realizing I'm not really that much of a fan of most of his stuff, but the stuff I am a fan of, it's just like perfection. Like there's like a handful of songs which are just perfection, and one of them I think is Vienna. So I'm just doing the song and the lyric from the same song. So it says, "Slow down, you crazy child. You're so ambitious for a juvenile. But then if you're so smart, tell me, why are you still so afraid? Where's the fire? What's the hurry about? You better cool it off before you burn it out. You've got so much to do and only so many hours in a day. But you know that when the truth is told, you can get what you want, or you can just get old. You're going to kick off before you even get halfway through. When will you realize Vienna waits for you?"
It's my karaoke song.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, you sing that?
Yeah.
Mine's "You Never Call Me By My Name" by David Allan Coe.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, that's that. It doesn't need much chatting about. It's
Mine is even less chatting. Mine is got no lyrics. It's Franz Liszt, which I avoided for the longest time because for some reason I mixed him up with Liberace in my mind.
Let's start with that.
Like 100 years apart.
Yeah, whatever. Piano. Anyway, the Horowitz version of Consolation Number 3. I think it's called "At Home with Horowitz." It's recordings he did at his home. And it's Consolation Number 3, great piece. And it sounds related to like the Succession theme. They're ripping off Liszt, I think.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. He was a rock star of piano,
right,
at the time. Like would take his white gloves off and throw them to the fainting women in the audience. Like it was like the Beatles of his time, which was I think late 1800s.
A sitting down sex symbol.
Yeah,
Nice.
You should listen to Liszt. There should be like a rule that you can't listen to Horowitz play it, and you have to determine whether you like the piece or not. Because Horowitz is like one of those people.
No, I can
he
tell.
could play a freaking the phone book, as they say.
Right, he's got an amazing touch. But what's that Victor Borge joke? Franz Liszt and his Mother Christmas.
So, Brent, what'd you have for us?
So, yeah, we've talked a lot. So think about like how much you guys rehearse, and you go on stage, and even when you guys hit something off, or a guitar kind of gets a little out of tune, or a head gets a little out, you can hear it, you can feel it. Nobody else knows it, guys. I mean, you guys rehearse, and it's like I told one of my former flight students, I was an instructor for a year, and the interesting thing was this kid was better than me at his level. I mean, he truly had gifted hands, but he was fucking lazy. And I just got so frustrated with him because I was like, you are wasting what God has given you, your ability.
Yeah.
And you were wasting it, and so I wish I had coined this. I heard this from someone else, and I don't know who authored it, but I was like, I said, is this a hobby for you, or is this your vocation? He's like, "No, sir, I'm a fighter pilot. This is what I want to be." And I was like, all right. I said, well, here's the deal. Amateurs work till they get it right. Professionals work till they can't get it wrong.
Yeah, I had just heard that recently. I don't know who it is either.
Yeah. And I told him that 17 years ago. And I don't think most people outside of whatever your craft is, whether you're an artist, whether you're a fighter pilot, or whether you are, you're making the spirit, right? It's like nobody truly understands how much work goes in to making it look that easy, right?
Yeah.
And so, and this goes into me and my wife we've created a treatment and have started outlining a series kind of detailing our lives. And this is from Bon Scott, Malcolm, and Angus, but I kind of think of, life as a metaphor. And, I said, I tell you, folks, it's harder than it looks. It's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. And that's just kind of like, I think, regardless of your craft, nobody understands. And so that's kind of been my metaphor for professionalism.
That couldn't be more perfect of a thing, because 2 days ago I was talking to my favorite bar in Austin, this place called Sam's Town Point. It's just filled with musicians and really great players and just really unique vibe there. And I was talking to someone about Back in Black. We were talking about AC/DC, and this guy's a great guitarist, and we were talking, and I said, you know what it's like, that album, because it was produced by Mutt Lange, who was a perfectionist, but mixed with AC/DC, who, rough around the edges and all those guys. I was like, this is like distillation. I was like saying, this is like distillation, because you've got this kind of mash in the band, and then you've got this distiller in Mutt Lange, and it's this perfect combination where it's not overly distilled, it's not just pure ethanol, it's got some organicness, it's got this shit that was in the mash and in the fermentation, but the album is what I would compare to distillation. And to make music that translates to 40,000 people, that's a real art. And to make an album like that is so kind of perfect, that's another art that a lot of kind of casual musicians or people who take things casually, who think things should be like free flowing and all that. Like, in one sense you're right. In another sense you're completely wrong, and you don't understand what's involved in making something like that.
So there's a balance between tension and looseness is important, and it's.
What's it? Tense, loose.
It has to be. It's a swinging pendulum, but you have to be kind of there the whole time. Relating to what you said about making it look easy, my wife was telling me she used to do, or still does, ballet just like as a hobby, and they had a teacher in LA that was danced with the Polish ballet, a very, very well-known teacher, and he would say that there was such a difference between the American ballet teachers and the American ballet schools versus the Russian schools that he had been involved in. He said the Russians specifically wanted the dancers to make it look like it was difficult. Like they wanted you to look like, oh my God, I can't believe that these dancers are so good they're able to do this on stage. Whereas the Americans, like a lot of things American, they make everything look easy. Like they're just so, it seems seamless. And it was a philosophical difference between the two schools of the Russians. Like, no, you want the audience to think it's hard.
Yeah.
Such a contrast to how we typically think. Like we want to look and see like, oh man, they just make it look so easy.
There's like a similarity in rugby and football, I feel like, because when you see like a wide receiver catch a ball, they do it with like style, and then they instantly go into like ease and posture, and then the rugby players are like,
and that's the only reason I still watch professional sports. I'm not emotionally attached to any. I mean, outside of the university here, I'm not emotionally attached to any professional organization, but I know how much work those guys put into that. And to have that skill of like that light touch, one-handed falling backwards, with dragging one toe, keeping it in ground. You're like, there's some pageantry there.
It's like anything. It's a form of self-perfecting. When you see, I kind of like the same reason. I'll watch the Super Bowl, not for the ads because they suck nowadays, but like for the one play, basically, where exactly you're talking about, which is a moment of perfection. In that, it doesn't have to be. It can be something like football or playing pool or whatever. It's a moment of perfection.
I did like the Dave Grohl commercial this year, though.
I don't think I saw that.
It's one about like thanking Canada for giving us all of these things, to include football. Inventing all of these things.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I don't think I saw that.
I'll tell you, I would like to go. I can't even remember the last time I went to a football game, but I feel like my first football game back, to go see a UT game, like it seems like it's a different ball game going to like Texas football at UT, or like, my neighbor's an Aggies fan, which I know it's a war.
There's a few good ones. I married one. But I grew up in Friday Night Lights.
So yeah.
So
my wife was an extra in the movie.
She was?
Yeah, like in the band, like way in the distance. I mean, I think the whole town was involved in that movie at some point.
That's funny. Well, I wanted to know a little bit more because we haven't really talked about Desert Door as an establishment, which you've got the distillery, but it's actually a place that people can visit and come
That's right.
and
It's a
drink.
very lovely place. It's very chill, great environment, great cocktails, great people. You're gonna have a great, we have great live music. So if you want to come see some of the local music scene of the up and comers, we have just some amazing talent that comes through there, and you're gonna, have some great children.
And did the establishment open to the public start before or at the same time that you were distilling, or did it come afterwards as a secondary thing?
No, it was all part of the plan. But what we talked about previously was the summer of 2016, and then we opened our door. So we graduated May of 17, started building out in June, and then opened our doors on Veterans Day in November, so 4 months later. So we're about 5.5 years old now. But we've expanded the tasting room to where, we've got covered patio space out front. We actually have an event space where we host, either private or corporate, or we've even had like 5 or 6 weddings there. We do a lot of rehearsal dinners and receptions, but we've actually hosted, get married on the stage at Desert Door.
That's big business out in Hill Country, the wedding. Yeah. I've not been anywhere that's got as many weddings happening.
No, this is the wedding capital of the state for sure.
And the divorce lawyer capital of the...
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's and you guys are in Driftwood.
Yes.
Yeah, just for anyone locally listening.
Well, we'll end it up there. We've been talking an hour. I'm sure we could talk a lot more than that, and we'll come visit. I haven't been in a long time to the distillery, but do you do tours ever?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I would love to see that and come see what we've been talking about.
Might even put you to work.
Absolutely. I will work for liquor. Great having you on. Really great to meet you, and thank you for all the gifts that you brought. All these amazing.
Yeah, those are like to-go flasks.
To-go flasks. These are really reusable. Really cool.
Yeah. No, I can't tell you how much I appreciate y'all having me. It's great. Great afternoon.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week. We've got food blogger whose name has just completely slipped my brain, but we'll post links to that coming up next week. A local Austin guy where I'm finally starting to see a lot of really good recommendations. He's got all the good spots because we've had an ongoing argument about whether food in Austin is good or not.
Yeah, everyone knows that brisket and that type of food is good in Austin, but is there anything else?
I am
good in Austin?
slowly
And
becoming some sort of positive person. I've had some good food experiences lately, and I'm dropping my negative Nancy shit.
We can find you some haunts. I promise. I'll put my Italian place up against any in Manhattan.
Oh,
Fuck
really?
Yes. What is it?
Vespaio.
Vespaio. Okay.
I haven't eaten there.
Okay.
Yeah, my good friends Daniel over there. They do a good job. It's all Northern Italian.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you just got to get to know people.
Yeah.
To make things happen. All right, guys, we'll see you next week.